In 2008, in Chilean Patagonia, wildlife biologist Christian Saucedo was reviewing images from a camera trap network set across the Chacabuco Valley. In front of him was a vast landscape that looked almost exhausted. After nearly a century of industrial sheep ranching, the native grasses had become thin and scattered. Entire slopes had been eroded, and the soil had been packed so hard that natural recovery seemed almost impossible. But in the middle of that abandoned-looking landscape, the research team discovered something no one expected. 6 individual pumas had appeared across more than 40,000 acres. They had not been released by humans, and they were not part of any official reintroduction program. They had found their own way back. To Saucedo, it felt like the first sign that the valley was not completely dead. And the most haunting question was this: if only a few pumas had quietly returned, why did an entire collapsed ecosystem begin to move again as if it was remembering itself? Before Europeans arrived, Chacabuco was once a wide, dry steppe, but it was full of life. Herds of guanacos moved through the valley, grazing on native grasses without destroying their roots, then spreading seeds through their dung. When a guanaco died, its body became food for Andean condors, foxes, scavenging birds, armadillos, and countless insects. At the top of that ecological chain was the puma, the predator that kept guanaco herds moving, preventing the grass from being stripped bare in one place for too long. But starting in the late 19th century, sheep ranches began turning the valley into a massive livestock operation. Tens of thousands of animals trampled the ground, compacting the soil, weakening the native grasses, and allowing invasive plants to spread. Guanacos were treated as competitors for sheep and were shot. Pumas were hunted because they threatened livestock. And when those two key species disappeared, the entire scavenger network that had once helped feed the valley collapsed with them. So what do you think? If a predator can cause real losses for ranchers, but also keep an entire landscape in balance, should humans protect it or control it? Drop your answer in the comments below. In 2004, Conservación Patagónica, the organization led by Christine and Douglas Tompkins, purchased the 72,000-hectare Chacabuco estate. Douglas had founded the North Face, while Christine had once led the Patagonia clothing brand. After leaving the business world, they used their wealth to buy damaged lands in Chilean Patagonia, restore them, and eventually donate them to the Chilean government as national parks. The plan sounded simple, but carrying it out was extremely difficult. Livestock had to be removed from the valley. Nearly 600 kilometers of old fencing had to be taken down so guanacos, pumas, huemul deer, and other wild animals could move freely again. The most damaged areas were surveyed, soil samples were collected, and native grasses such as quirón were reseeded by hand and even by helicopter. But the hardest challenge was not only the land itself. Many local ranching families saw the project as a threat to their livelihoods and their culture. To restore the valley, Saucedo's team had to do more than heal nature. They also had to rebuild trust with the people around it. Starting in 2008, Christian Saucedo's team began tracking pumas systematically, using camera traps and radio collars. They recorded where the cats traveled, how often they hunted, what they ate, and even how they interacted with one another. At the same time, the guanaco population was counted every year to see whether the valley was truly recovering. At first, Chacabuco still felt almost empty. Only a few hundred guanacos remained, and many areas looked too damaged to support large herds again. But after the livestock were removed, the fences came down, and pumas were no longer hunted, the landscape began to change. The guanaco population slowly increased, then rose faster than anyone had expected. By 2018, when the land officially became part of Patagonia National Park, more than 3,000 guanacos were living in the valley. And the pumas surprised scientists as well. They were not as strictly solitary as textbooks had described. Several individuals could appear near the same kill site, showing that when prey returned in abundance, even the behavior of the predator began to change. What amazed scientists most was not simply that the pumas had returned, but what they left behind after each hunt. A guanaco was too large for a puma to eat completely, so the remaining carcass became a source of life for Andean condors, foxes, scavenging birds, and hundreds of insect species. But guanaco carcasses did more than feed animals. As they decomposed, they enriched the soil with nitrogen, helping the grass grow stronger and more nutritious. Guanacos were drawn back to those richer patches of grass, and the pumas hunted there again. The cycle began to close. Pumas hunted, carcasses fed the soil fed the grass brought guanacos back, and the entire valley slowly came back to life through what had been left on the ground. The success in Chacabuco did not mean every problem disappeared. For many local ranching families, pumas were still a real threat because they could attack sheep and damage an already fragile source of income. Even though the project created new jobs, trained park rangers, and supported local communities, it could not fully replace a way of life that had existed for generations. This story shows that when an apex predator disappears, what is lost is not just one animal, but an entire web of life that it quietly held together. If this story made you think differently, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to see more strange and powerful stories of nature's recovery.